Okay, so I'm Alessandro Canossa. I've been at Ubisoft for 1 year, not very long. I was in academia before. I was a professor at Northeastern University in Boston, and before that I was, again, a professor in IT University in Copenhagen. So I changed job because what I do is actually the perfect overlap of synergies between academia and industry. Namely, is analytics, user research, and data science. So what I'm talking about here today is a little bit aligned to what I've seen that is the theme of the conference, but at the same time is a little bit of a white fly compared to what I heard Pavel present. I don't do mobile work. I don't do casual games. Ubisoft is specialized in AAA games, and console is the primary market so far. But what I'm here to present today is a different way to look at who are our players, and there's a shift in the industry that actually moves towards always online live games. So let's start with a little bit of an introduction. Games as a service. From the 70s, games have always been marketed as products where you pay once and you're in. Okay. I was saying, they started being marketed as products. You pay once and you're there forever. You have a physical entity in your hands. From the 2010s, player engagement has been trying to be pushed for a longer time, where you pay often to stay in, and generally you try to create games as a service where you are constantly there. I'm Blondel Juin. She is the Vice President for Live Operation at Ubisoft, and she says, I'm reading it because it's a beautiful quote to understand what is a live game and games as a service. Games as a service, or live games, refer to games that offer an evolving long-term entertaining experience for our players. They often have a focus on online competitive multiplayer experiences, such as Tom Clancy Rainbow Six or The Division. But they can also include other types of games like The Crew. Live refers to all the active interactions created for the game community, including pre- and post-launch, as well as regular updates, new content, and events, both in-game and out-of-game. Throughout the game's lifespan. I forgot to mention one thing. The average playtime engagement with the product from the 70s up to 2010 was between 20 and 30 hours. What we see when we started to shift business model after the 2010s, the playtime is approaching 60, 70 hours. And I'm talking about The Division especially, where the average playtime for all players is 68 hours. It's 3 times longer, so obviously you do have much more of value for your money. Okay, so what are we here today? We are here to understand how, if you shift your mentality from a product to a service, you need to look at a completely new set of parameters for success. It's important to account for the social dimension of play. It's an activity you do with people, so that needs to be accounted for. Social dynamics of the communities growing, decreasing, thought leaders, gatekeepers, they achieve different effect on the community of players according to what they do, and understand that there are key members that keep the game alive. Not all players are the same. I'm talking about the influencers. There's a bit of ambiguity because normally when you talk about influencers, you talk about people with a great reach, like Twitch streamers, YouTubers, bloggers. They have large numbers. It's the number of the people they are connected to. They also have unidirectional relations, meaning they have a perceived authority, and is the direction of the connection from a fan to an influencer, to an authority. So these are the two key features of the traditional influencers: large numbers and perceived authority. The traditional influencer is usually identified with tools like Clout, Peer Index, Cred. These are just few of them. The ratio, the way they work, they actually... So each one of these tools have a secret recipe on how to identify influencers. And in general, they are not very willing to share it. First, because they see it as a competitive advantage. And second, because they believe that if you know how they work, you can actually game the game and make sure that you get a higher influencer score. But in general, the bottom line is that they look at the ratio of reactions generated, for example, a like on Facebook, versus the amount of content created. So if you create not a lot of content, but you get a lot of likes, you are an influencer. If you create a lot of content and you get the same number of likes, you have a less score. Okay? So the traditional influencer has a problem because reading a blog, retweeting, liking a post shows a lower level of engagement than a conversation while playing together for a few hours. This is a fact that has been proven true by ethnography studies recently as well as 20 years ago. There's a gigantic difference between clicking one button to like a post of somebody and engaging in a conversation for an hour and a half while you're playing together. I don't think I need to convince you on that. So we want to look for this new type of influencers. They are less glamorous and less visible. They are very passionate about a game. They have a wide-reaching network of friends, even though they do not have the millions of views that PewDiePie has on YouTube channels. They are vocal in the community. They are engaged. They post on forums. And they are actively engaged with the multiplayer aspect of the game, meaning they actually do play a lot. While you can expect that PewDiePie maybe plays PlayerUnknown Battleground a few times a week, but he's not the most engaged player. You can count on that. So the metric of interest to identify these players are who plays with whom, how often, how long, who invites whom, and which games do they play together. So these are kind of straightforward metrics that if you are from the publisher or developer side, you have easily access to. And then the next step for us was actually to adopt social network analysis tools to identify communities and influencers. I think I need to spend a couple of words to describe what the game, The Division is, because we tested this new model for analytics on this game and on this game community. So The Division is an online open-world RPG shooter set in a near future New York City, in the aftermath of a smallpox pandemic. The player is an agent of The Division and must help them rebuild the operation in Manhattan, investigate the outbreak, and combat criminal activity. The game was released in March 16, so a year and a half ago or more. It has a total number of 15 million players, and it's growing. It has almost 2 million active players. Every month, 2 million people keep playing it, more than a year after release. Destiny, just to compare numbers, Destiny, after the release of Destiny 2, has pretty much faded, while Tom Clancy Edition still has plans to go on for another year. So what can you do? What are the activities that you can do in this game? There's both collaborative PvE and competitive PvP. You can both play together against the environment or play against each other. You can do solo play, where you play the missions alone, or you can do group play, where you engage together with a group of friends. The groups are maximum of 4 people, so there's a group creator and 3 people coming in, and the people that can join are either random quick match selected or friends in your friend list. Okay? So if you have any question, I'd say, let me know, because this needs to be kind of clear before we go on. So this is a bit of a technical presentation. There's lots of numbers. I hope I don't scare anyone. We start with an initial sample of 246,000 players and all their friends. So we selected a pool of players and then looked at all of their friends and then created a group, and the group is 246,000 people. We started filtering. We wanted people that have at least 50 hours in the game. We wanted people with at least 10 friends, and we wanted players that played in a group at least twice in the previous week. So why did we want 50 hours? In order to finish the game, you need 30 hours. The average play time, we know it's 68 hours. 50 was a good number in between, after you reach the end game and before the median cutoff for the average play time. At the same time, 10 friends. Why 10 friends? we found out that the average number of friends in the list is 26. 10 was a very conservative amount to say you do have friends, or I mean, a friend online is not really a friend, but anyway, you do have people that you know, and at the same time, you're not on the higher scale of the people that have more than 26. And play in groups at least twice in the last week, it means that you do engage with the multiplayer. So, from the 246,000 players, filtering for these three parameters, we arrive at a baseline of 2,100 players. The analysis we took on at the three stages. First is the network identification. Find the influential players from each community. Then we wanted to do some triangulation, which is to validate these influential players by looking at other behaviors. For example, how much they play in general or how much they post on forums. And the third step was actually dig in detail on the influencers. Who are they? What do they do? How do they play? What other games do they play? So the first step was network identification. We use, okay, I don't know if I should get too much into detail. If you are interested, you can contact me after. And now I'll try to give a quick overview. So the modularity measures are used to detect communities by dividing the network into clusters. Okay, so based on what? Based on whether the number of edges within clusters exceed the number expected on the basis of chance. So when I'm talking about edges and nodes, a node is a player, an edge is a line that connects two players that know each other or play together. So if within a group there's more edges than expected by chance, this is a community. There are algorithms that do that. And the last point was, starting from the baseline sample of 2,000 players, we found 94 communities. So this is the graph that we call the big flower of sociality. It's 94 communities. Each one of them is identified by a color, and you can see that there's different type of relations here. There are three types of community. There are floating communities. They are not connected to any other community. There are peripheral communities and entangled communities. So this is a floating community. Clearly does not connect to anything else. This is peripheral because it does have connection with other people and other communities. And this is entangled, where it's really difficult to tease it out from other communities. So we selected to focus on only the entangled communities, the center of the flower we saw before. They are less likely, we decided to focus there because it is less likely that players in floating or peripheral communities have influence on the community at large. So we identified 49 communities that are in the center. And the one main gateway, and there is one main gateway influencer for each one of these communities. Okay, I should have used a higher resolution picture. So this is the area where we find the 49 communities. And for each one of them, there is one person that receives more edges than any other. Okay, this is huge. We find out that these 49 influencers reach, which means play with, 16,442 players. That is 341 players for each influencer. It's not the numbers of PewDiePie, of course, but what we're looking at is that these people spend hours and hours with 341 players. The average, just to give you an idea in proportion, the average for the whole player population is 18.5. So that's an order of magnitude higher than anything we've seen before. These 49 players, just in our small sample, represent the hidden backbone of the game community. So, triangulation means, okay, now we found these 49 players. Who are they? What do they do? What do they do differently from others? We started looking at the number of posts on forums. We only focused on Ubisoft official The Division forums, because that's where we have the data from. We could have looked at Reddit, we could have looked at a number of other forums, but it wasn't as easy to get fast data, so we focused only on there. We found that the total player population, that number is from April 17. So it's a bit, anyway. So the total population is about 40 million people. there are 26,000 people posting on the forums, which is 8.18%. And people with more than 10 posts is actually 0.026%. It's very low. If we look at the 49 influencers, 11 of them post on forums, and 4 of them have more than 10 posts. So when you compare the forum activity of the influencer population with the general population, again, there's a world of difference. Now we started digging a little bit into these influencers. Who are they, and how do they use the games? We found, we compared the 49 influencers with the baseline after we filtered for 50 hours, 10 friends, and playing online twice in the last week, together with the total population. The session is like, what is a play session? Is when you start playing and when you end. So we are looking at the number of sessions. There are 608 number of sessions. With the mean number of sessions is 608, with a standard deviation of 13. The baseline, which is the 2,000 players we did after the filtering, they have 113 sessions. So this is still already pretty high, while the total population has about 18 sessions. Number of friends. As I said, the average number of friends for the baseline is 26. For the total population is 8, but for the influencers is 178. So they have a lot of friends, and these are people that they are like in their friend list. The number is different from the 300 they play with because they play with a lot of people that they are not necessarily friends with. Sometimes they do random quick match, meaning that they get random players assigned. This is something we tried that goes a little bit beyond, trying to figure out what is the gamescape, the ecosystem of all the Ubisoft game for these 49 people. So, as you can see, don't count, I'll tell you, there are 49 dots here. Each dot is one of these 49 influencers, and they are divided by the other games that they play. So there's a bunch of people that play The Division, but they also play For Honor, Unity, and Syndicate, and Rogue. This is the Assassin's Creed and For Honor cluster. Then there's the Far Cry, players that play Far Cry a lot, as well as The Division. Then there's, The Division dedicated players, and then the Rainbow Six Siege. And the last cluster over there is the crew. So it shows that there are differences between these 49 players. They have different preferences. Some of them prefer The Division most of all, but others have other preferences as well. Just to give you an idea, the community is identified for similarity games. Okay. Now, these 5 groups that we've seen, the 5 clusters, what do they tell us, besides the fact that they play The Division and the Assassin's Creed games? It's possible to use the theory of immersion by Kalea and look at what other games they play to figure out what kind of players they are. The people that play Rainbow Six Siege as a main one and The Division, they're really into tactical type of immersion. They're, tactical. For Honor and Assassin's Creed, they are very narrative game with a very strong setting. So narrative is very important for them. The crew is all about vertigo. It's a racing game, so it's about speed, it's about visceral immersion. So it's a performative type of immersion. Far Cry is an open world exploration game. Very, very strong spatial exploration, so that's the thing. While The Division is the one with the strongest group multiplayer component, so it's actually strong for shared immersion, shared with other people. So different influencers appeal to different players, and their motivation is revealed through the other games that they play. Now, what are the implications of this work? Influencers can be leveraged for feedback. You can ask influencer stuff, and they will give you a pulse of the community. They can also allow us to reach the rest of their community with dedicated messages based on their motivation and preferences. I want to talk to people that have a strong narrative preference. I look for my narrative influencers and try to dedicate a message to them. Second implication, this is something we're looking at the moment, is looking at virality and spread of premium in-game vanity items. So, first step is to establish a baseline. You check, given an influencer and given his community, you check what is the level of penetration of a certain item. Then you inject the item by providing the influencer with the object. Let's say, I don't know, a skin for a gun or a backpack or whatever it is. And then every 2 weeks, you check how many of the players in the community have acquired that same item. You measure the spread once you give it to the influencer. And the last implication, which is probably the biggest, is that shifting the focus from traditional influencer to this new type of influencer has a big impact, because traditional influencer require effort in terms of maintenance and coaching. I don't know if you are aware how much time publishers use to coach bloggers, YouTubers to, say the right thing. They also represent a liability for negative press. Have you heard about PewDiePie playing PlayerUnknown Battleground saying the N-word? Anybody? No? Okay. Well, yes. That guy, that was a gigantic backlash on the developer that endorsed him. Gigantic. And at the same time, the traditional, influencers are more interested in establishing their own brand than actually, shining light on the game that they are playing. For example, Conan O'Brien, the idiot gamer, any of you watch his videos? Okay, it's pretty funny. The thing is, he's pretty funny. And he does it for himself. He doesn't do it for the game. PewDiePie doesn't do it for the game either. These are people that have their own self-interest at heart. While the new influencer require no effort in terms of maintenance. These are people coming from the grassroots of the game community. They are less glamorous and not a liability. If any of them, I don't know, goes out and says something really stupid, no problem for the brand, no problem for the developer. And they may have a bigger impact because they are not interested in establishing their own brand, but they play because they are really or genuinely passionate. So, that was the end. Was it? Ah, no. Okay. There are a number of influential players. These are a bit of a sum up. There are influential players in the community. Players are not all the same. They can be identified with social network methods. Such influential players can be verified based on their activities on forums and other metrics out of the game. And influencers may fulfill different roles in the community based on other games owned. So, this is pretty much for me. If you have any questions.